Well, I'm William Stewart. Welcome back to our verse by verse study on the book of Galatians. We're in chapter 3, really a great chapter. It explains so much about the basis of our salvation. We're in verses 14 and 15 today, and Paul is explaining, Paul who wrote the book, the Apostle Paul, that our salvation is based in Abraham, in his promises, or from his promises based in what God told him, the three promises, that he would have a son, all nations would be blessed through him, meaning Messiah, and lastly, that he'd be father of a great nation, meaning Israel. The son, I think, was a sign that the last two would be completed after his death, and he had gone to be with God. So we're then in 14, Paul reiterates that the blessing of Abraham might come to the Gentiles through Jesus Christ, that we might receive the promise of the Spirit through faith. So the blessing here, which is a good things from God, basically, in this case, it's a very general word of Abraham. This again is the promise that all nations would be blessed through Abraham from Genesis 12:3. And that this blessing also would come to the Gentiles. Not only Abraham was a Gentile, the Jewish nation did not exist. And to the Jews, it was stated that the Gentiles also would be blessed by God. Hosea 1:10, Hosea 2:23, for example. So this came through Jesus Christ as the fulfillment of the Abrahamic covenant. And that from this then, let me back up just for a second, that the emphasis here on the Gentiles, since there were many Jewish readers of this letter in Galatia, they needed to recognize that the Gentiles had equal access to God through Christ, just as they did. Even though they had all the benefits in the Old Testament, things were equal now. So the promise of the Holy Spirit through faith. So why bring up the Holy Spirit here? Well, again, this is part of the new covenant, that which is based again in Abraham, the new covenant being the promise in the Jews in the Old Testament, specifically in Jeremiah 31, verses 31 to 34, reiterated in Ezekiel 36 and 37, the last several verses in Isaiah 59 and other places, and everywhere it talks about the kingdom is really through the Old Testament. The kingdom it's spoken about in the New Testament. New covenant then is also quoted in the New Testament in Hebrews 8 and Hebrews 10. So that part of this promise was the Holy Spirit, mentioned in Isaiah 59 and in Ezekiel 36. So he's reminding them that, again, linking that the promise of the Spirit to the Jews in the Old Testament is also linked to the promises to the Gentiles. So everybody would have the Spirit, and everybody would have equal access and privileges through Christ by faith alone. So verse 15 says, "Brethren, I speak after the manner of men. There will be a man's covenant." He's not talking about the Abrahamic covenant here. He's just giving an example. "Yet be confirmed, no man disannulleth or added thereunto." So just like a contract, a covenant is nothing but a contract that a person can't take away from a signed contract or add it to it. So he's emphasizing here that the covenant with Abraham was a contract from God. So nobody can add to it or take it away. And it's actually, as it emphasizes in Genesis 15, that only this contract is only based on God and not two parties. He fulfills all the covenants or all the terms of the contract, basically. So having said that in 15, he's basically saying the covenant to Abraham stands of Messiah coming and salvation, all nations being blessed through Father Abraham, including the Gentiles. And it's not through the Jewish law. Okay. So again, we continue to learn salvation is by faith. It's based out of Abraham. We do not work for our salvation. We don't have to work to prove ourselves to God in our Christian life, because we've learned from other lessons that say in Ephesians 2, Colossians 2, that it's through the regeneration, being a new person, and the Holy Spirit that we please God as we live a life by faith. This new person longs to serve and does serve God as a new person, as said in Romans 6, last half of the chapter. So this covenant is set. It's based in Abraham. It's made functional through Messiah. It's not made through the law. We do not work for it. We were saved by faith, and now we live by faith. Okay, thank you for joining me today. We'll continue on with this very amazing chapter next time. I hope you'll join me then.